Hello everyone, this is Leslie Pelch at the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, and I might give just another minute or so for people to sign in before I get started fully. You can see that I'm going to do a brief intro at the beginning of our webinar just to make sure that everybody knows how to use the GoToWebinar panel interface. Maybe actually I'll go ahead and do that since I think it's time to start. And I'll tell you a little bit about VCGI in a moment as well. So the most important thing to know about our interface that we're using today is that if all you see is a little panel kind of like this on the side of your screen, you want to click on the orange button to open it up. And then you will see there are a number of different panels within your whole panel that are important. One is to make sure that you've got your audio set up properly so you can hear. And another one to keep an eye on is the questions panel that allows you to type in questions. So if you do have issues with your audio, please make sure to use the phone number that's in your panel in order to call in if you need to call in. If you're using a mic and speakers, make sure to set your audio settings that way. So as I said, if you have questions at any time, you can type them into your questions box. That will come to me. Everybody's muted, so you don't have to worry about any noise in the background, but you can communicate with me through the questions box, and I will be checking them periodically. It kind of alerts me when I have questions anyway. Let's see. Oh, so some other things are that we will say, I will be checking in on the questions every so often to see if any of them need to be answered right away, but I will probably save a lot of them till the end. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted at VCGI's YouTube page within the next few days, by the end of the week at least, as pretty much all of our other webinars are also posted there, so you can check that out. And actually, let me just briefly go to our web page to show you how you can get to that. So this is VCGI's web page, and if you click on the Events button over on the left, and then within that, the Event Archive, you'll see that our webinars are listed here, but the recorded webinar is actually, for every single one of them, is at the YouTube page. So you can just get the link to the YouTube page there. The other option is right on the front page of our website. Over on the left, there's a little list of different ways to connect with us, and the YouTube link is right there. Okay. So, I want to start off with a little outline of what I plan to cover today. I realized, of course, after I put this out there, I really have a little bit too much to cover today in just an hour, so I'll warn you that there's a good chance that I'm going to go over an hour, but I'm going to start out by actually asking you a question about the beginning of the webinar to see what people are most interested in. Because I did say I was going to show you how to use a GPS, and I'm not planning to use the webcam. I'm planning to just do a quick continuation of this PowerPoint to go over the key aspects of using a simple consumer-grade GPS, and most importantly, collecting data and then focusing more on the downloading of the data and excuse me, transforming it so that you can use it in GIS. So perhaps I'll go ahead and do my poll. So you should see a question pop open in front of you, and if you could just go ahead and click on your answer to that question, I will very quickly see the results of those answers. Everybody could go ahead and pick an answer. Looking rather 50-50. Anybody who hasn't yet, go ahead and vote. Thank you. Okay, almost everybody's voted. There we go. All right, it looks like most of you, the majority of you, definitely want to skip the GPS section and move on to downloading. So since it is a pretty clear majority, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm not going to take a lot of time to go over using the GPS. I promise that I will do another webinar a little bit more focused on actually using the GPS, although it's harder to do that in a webinar format. So then we will, I'll do a quick overview of that. We'll move on to downloading in a variety of different ways and in a variety of different formats the data that you've collected on your GPS. And a lot of my purpose here is to highlight some of the issues that you're going to come across as you do this, and the fact that there are actually very simple solutions to all of them. You just kind of have to know what the solutions are depending on what software you're using and kind of what your individual situation is. So we'll try to cover a bunch of different options. You can see that we're going to download using different tools, and we're going to deal with the projection issue. Okay, so now my PowerPoint. I don't like using PowerPoint in here because it often gets stuck. That's just as well. We want to skip the GPS part, isn't it? See if we can do the quick version. I think what I'll do is I'll skip over the intro to the actual GPS itself and just talk a little bit about collecting data. So basically when you have a handheld GPS, all you have to do is click a button to collect a point. It varies a little bit, I'm sure, from one type of GPS to another, but they're generally all the same in the basics of what you're doing, which is you're pushing a button, it's collecting the information about where that location is. You generally have some options about editing that data a little bit right in that moment. It's usually a good idea to at least give it a name or a number or something that's meaningful, or if it is assigned a number and you don't feel like editing it, write it down so that you know point number 001 was when I was standing by the big tree, whatever. And then you make sure to click OK or save at the end of that process, and you've now saved the point. So that's the really quick version of collecting waypoints. If you want to collect tracks, which is essentially collecting lines or collecting like trail data, in the Garmin GPS, you go into your tracks menu and you make sure initially that it's turned off, so you can do the settings. Settings include how it's going to be collected, whether by distance or time. You can also choose auto, which allows the unit itself to decide whether it's going to collect with distance or time, depending on how fast you're moving, whether you're standing still. And then you usually have some options about the intervals or the speed with which you're collecting data, and that will vary depending on how fast you're moving, whether you're riding a bike or walking, how much detail you feel you need in your data. Okay, I think I'm going to give up on the PowerPoint anyway because it's just not working today. Okay. Once you have actually collected your points, waypoints, and or tracks into your GPS, the main distinction between what everybody else does with a GPS, which is generally just navigating or just seeing where they are on a map, and what we're going to do is getting that data off the GPS and doing something with it. So what I just opened is the software that actually came with my Garmin GPS. I have a Garmin 60 non-mapping unit. It's about the cheapest thing that I could get about 3 years ago. And it comes with a free software that could allow you to map things if you want to use it. It's very basic. Doesn't allow you to bring other data in. It's not very useful to me. But what it is useful for is it allows me to download the data. If I don't have any other tools, I can at least download the data from my GPS with this. I've got a cable that came with the GPS plugged into the back of my GPS, USB port in my computer. And you can see that transfer gives me the option to receive data from my device. So the first thing is it has to find the device. And I have to say, when I tried for this for the first time ever yesterday, it did take a couple of tries to get it to find it. I think I had to unplug it and plug it back in a couple times. But you can see that it has found it. Right now I'm telling it I want to download tracks. Just go ahead and say receive. And I turned this off yesterday. I didn't want it to turn it off each time. All right, so there's some tracks. Change Japan. All right, so you can see I collected some data yesterday that is essentially a loop. Let's also download some points. Okay, there's my points. My points, as you can see, were collected along the route, or the track rather, that I was collecting. So I walked a trail, I did a loop, and along the way I collected some points and gave them names. As you can see, I didn't leave the default name. So the point of doing this in this software that came with my unit is actually that I can now save this data out as, I'm just going into a folder that I created earlier. And this is going to be webinar 1 ArcGIS. And I'm saving it as webinar 1 points, because this is the point data. And notice that I have options about the type. Not a lot of options, but some options. And the one that I'm particularly interested in is GPX, because this doesn't give me the option to do KML or shapefile, but it does give me GPX, which is actually fairly useful in a number of different ways. And we'll do the same thing with our track data. And again, I'm going to change this to GPX and save it. All right, so that's all I really wanted to do here. Let's go make sure it actually got saved. There we are, webinar 1 points, webinar 1 track, and they're both GPX files. Good. Yeah. So now I'm just going to close this. Don't want to save it. So that can be useful just for the sake of creating GPX. I am now going to open a software program that is free, and that was created by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources many years ago. It used to be called DNR Garmin. It's now called DNR GPS. And you can see it's a very simple software program. There's some key things going on here that are sort of preset that I'm going to point out, because if you go use DNR GPS for the first time, it's not necessarily going to look like this. The first thing I'll mention is that down at the bottom, the projection is set to Vermont. And if any of you are not from Vermont, obviously this is not what you would necessarily want to set your projection to. Also, it's already found the GPS unit, which in general will happen automatically if you use DNR GPS, but if it doesn't, notice that under GPS you can say find GPS, and that just sort of forces it to look around a little bit more. Often it will start by looking at the wrong kind of port, and you want it to look at the USB port, but now you can't tell it that anymore. You just have to tell it to go look again. You'll know that you have success when you see the name of your GPS unit up here. The projection is set by going over to File, Set Projection. And the point here in setting this projection, what we're doing is we're saying, all right, I'm downloading some GPS data, and I'm actually going to do the same thing I just did with the map source software, but I'm just going to do it now with DNR GPS instead, because it gives me more options. When I download this GPS data using DNR GPS, I can actually output it in a variety of different formats. And one of the most useful things about this particular free software is that I can output it as projected data, meaning in a state plane coordinate system rather than simply as lat-long coordinates. And that's going to be, and also as a shapefile. And all of that is useful to me because I can immediately use it in GIS software. So I happen to know that the Vermont state plane coordinate system code is 32145. If I didn't know that, I would have to search around a little bit. I would need to know what datum my coordinate system was, and I do know that it's NAD 83. If I was looking at for some other state plane system, you can see that I can pick it from this list. It's alphabetical. In the case of some states, you'll actually have a few choices. Let's see if I can find New Hampshire. Right, so New Hampshire, you can see, has both feet, and the other option is actually meters. If you look in here where my cursor is, it says units equals M, as opposed to units equals US feet. Vermont happens to just have one in here. They didn't bother to do the feet one because our standard is indeed meters, which you can see right there, units equals meters. So NAD 83 Vermont, that's what I want. I click OK and I get the confirmation right here. So we set that ahead of time so that when I now download my waypoints, what you will see is that not only do I have the latitude and longitude and indeed the names that I gave the points that I collected, I also have these XY coordinates that are projected into the Vermont State Plane system. So they're right in the data. Those have been created not by my GPS, but by DNR GPS, this software program. Another kind of nice thing that you could potentially take advantage of at this point is you can actually edit this data. So I could, for instance, decide that I want to take out one of these points and say, well, I don't really need that one in there, that was a mistake. And I just have to highlight that whole row and then click on the delete button. Now, it's important to know I didn't just delete it from my GPS, so I haven't destroyed that data entirely. This is sort of an interim step where I've downloaded the data to DNR GPS, and I can do what I want with it at this point. I can save it out in whatever format is available to me. But what I'm interacting with right now is this interim version of the data that's actually just existing in DNR GPS. Once I output it, this is what I'm outputting. So if I edit this and then output it, that is going to reflect the fact that I just deleted that one point. So let's go ahead and save to. So again, to output the data now and save it onto my computer, I go to File, Save to, File, and I need to get to the right place, which is here. So here's my folder where I want to put the data, and now you can see all my options. I can do an Esri shapefile, which in this case will be a projected shapefile, so it will be in the proper coordinate system. I've also got KML, or Keyhole Markup Language, which is the Google format. I've got GPS Exchange, which is the same thing that I created with my other software, GPX. And then I do have some other options here. I'm going to do both Esri shapefile, and I'm going to call this 2, just so that we know where this came from. Save that. Okay, and I'll just do it again, and save it as a KML. So again, this is the format that the Google programs like Google Earth and Google Maps can read. Now, it's okay for me to give this the same name because I'm saving it in a different file format, so it's going to have a different extension. Okay, so now let's download our tracks. Oops. Track download. An interesting thing about GPS units is, or at least the Garmin units, consumer grade unit that I use, is that it has this thing called the active log, which is kind of like the bucket full of tracks. If I had oh, and actually, now that I think of it, I never did save this out as a named track, but if I had, it would actually show up in here twice, essentially. It would show up as part of the active log, and then also, if I had saved and named it as a track, it would show up listed once again, but with the name of the track. In this case, I didn't save it, so my track actually is the whole active log, so that's fine. We are going to, and it looks like a bunch of points because each of these is what's called a breadcrumb. It is essentially a point, but it's remembering how these points are connected. They're not just random disconnected points. They're connected in a particular order that creates the track. All right, so let's save this as well. And notice that it goes back to save it as a KML. It goes back to the same folder. And notice that because it is sort of a pile of points, we can actually choose to save this as we want. And because what I created was potentially a closed object, I can also save it as a polygon. So I have options here, but I do want to save it as a line. Okay, one more. And this time, we'll save it as a shape. Okay. Okay, so that is DNR GPS. It's very useful because it can put your data into whatever format you want it to be very quickly and easily. You can edit it in here a little bit if you want to, so there's some options. And the nicest thing about it really is that it's free and you can project the data with it. That's all I need to say about that. All right, so I'm going to pause for just a moment, go into my folder here and point something out. So you heard me say that this data that we just created, the shapefile data, which is right here, SHP, SHX, DBF, a shapefile is actually composed of these three files. What's not created when we use DNR GPS is a PRJ file, which actually, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does now. Oh, I'm sorry. The last time I used this, I either didn't notice or I don't think DNR Garmin did this. I was going to say it didn't create a PRJ file, which is kind of a translation file that tells the software what projection the data is in. I did just want to open it up. It's essentially just a text file. And it literally just says what datum and coordinate system the data is in. And so anyway, you can see the second one. It's in there somewhere. Oh, I know it's in the number. It provides the information that software needs in order to figure out where the 0, point is for this coordinate system and how to line it up properly. And we will talk about why that's important in just a moment when we start using QGIS. All right. So let us now open up QGIS. So QGIS is a free and open source GIS software. It's real GIS software, but it is free and open source. And the nice thing about that, obviously, it's free. The open source aspect of it, if you're at all a coding type of a person, who actually does computer code, that might be of interest to you. There's a whole community of people working on improving QGIS and adding new functions to it. And so I'm not going to go too much into that. But here is, and unfortunately I do not have the most current version of Quantum. I haven't had a chance to download it and revise my trainings to reflect that. The most important thing, at least in this version of Quantum, before I start doing anything, when I open up a blank project, map project, I immediately go to Settings, Project Properties, and I set the coordinate reference system. So again, the coordinate system and projection I need to know about. I need to understand that it's important because I need to set my project to reflect what I want my project to be in. And this will allow the software to then deal with data that's actually in other formats and bring it in and transform it in a way that allows it to continue to line up properly and scale properly. So I know that I want to set my project to NAD 83 Vermont. NAD, by the way, stands for North American Datum. Remember we saw datum before. You can see that I have things listed here because I've used them before. But even if I didn't have anything there, if you were to go get Quantum and start trying to do this, in order to find your state's or Vermont's coordinate system, you could just type in a word and it'll start to do a search, and you'll see the results down here. And I can still find my NAD 83 Vermont here. If I put in New Hampshire, I can find the two New Hampshires, NAT 83. This one is meters and this one is feet. But since what I want is Vermont. And the other thing is, remember this code. If you write down this code or remember it, it's another easy way to always find the correct coordinate system. So first thing I did was enable on-the-fly CRS transformation. That's the software taking whatever the data is and transforming it to Vermont State Plane. And then I actually tell it Vermont State Plane is the thing I want it to transform everything into. If all the data that I bring in is actually in the same coordinate system, I don't really need to worry about that because it will all line up properly. I just want to deal with any eventuality of any other data, and also it helps to make sure that my coordinates are accurate, my scale is accurate. The software program kind of knows what's going on. So I'm just going to put in the town boundary data real quick. So there are the towns. And I'm not going to go into how to do all this just because that's for another webinar, which is already posted. So there's the town boundaries. So at this moment, we actually have a bunch of different options because I already have downloaded and transformed my data. So I have a number of different ways I can bring it into QGIS. But the first thing I want to demonstrate is actually the fact that even if I hadn't already downloaded this data, if this was my way that I was going to deal with it, I can use QGIS to download and transform my data. When you initially turn on QGIS for the first time, I don't think this particular plugin will be showing. So let me just point out that there are these things called plugins, and there's a plugin manager. Plugins just means extra functionality that's not automatically apparent in the toolbar when you first turn things on. They're little modules that people have created over the years that are available, and in this case it's part of what is automatically downloaded when you install the software, but it's not turned on. So you do have to go looking for it in this plugin manager, and you can see GPS tools is right here, and it is turned on. And that's why we see this tool right here. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And you can see that in some ways it's very similar to DNR GPS. The first thing is I have to tell it what kind of device it is. In this case it's a Garmin serial, so I'm going to leave that. The port is indeed the USB port. I can download my waypoints first. I have to give it a name that will appear in the layer list. And we'll call this webinar 3. Right, this is my third way of downloading. But this name is just sort of a temporary name. I also have to actually tell it what I want the file that it's going to create to be called and where I want it to go. And you can see I'm going right back into my same folder. And I'm going to call it webinar 3 points. And you can see I don't have any options in terms of format. So what it's doing is it's going to download the data and make a GPX file, just like my software that came with the GPS did. But now it's going to put it in the right spot. And all I have to do is that. And if I zoom to layer extent, so there are my points that I collected. Oh, and just to prove we're in the right place, let me just add. So what I'm doing right now is adding a web map service. And this allows, in this case, imagery, ortho imagery, to be streamed over the internet to my map project rather than having to download and bring in a bunch of orthos. All right. Now, the problem is my points just went away, didn't they? Just have to change the order of things here and change the color so that you can see them. Okay, there are my points. So you can see my office is right about here, I think, and I went for a little walk along a path over near the river, and then I came back. All right, let's do that same thing for the track. I'm going to change waypoints to tracks. Output file is pretty much the same, except track. And there it is. That's a little bit hard to see. There's my track. Let me just point out the fact that we can click on my points. Oops. And see that indeed the names that I gave these points on my GPS are still here. Did some benches, sign. That's the question. Yeah, that's VCGI. Okay, so I've downloaded the data using QGIS. The one other thing I might potentially want to use QGIS for is actually to output this data, because I can once again, simply by doing Save As, output it in a number of different ways. So I've got shapefile, I've got keyhole markup language, KML, and I think I won't bother to do all of them since it's pretty much the same, but I want to point out that if you choose shapefile, it will project it and it will create that PRJ file. You do have to be a little bit careful what you pick right here. So if you create a shapefile, make sure to set this to project CRS, because remember we set our project to be Vermont State Plane, so we want to make sure to say project here. The original data is not Vermont State Plane, because remember the original data is directly from the GPS. So we want to set that to project CRS and then output it, and we would just go through that same process of browsing to where we want to save it, giving it a name, and then setting our CRS. If we do KML, the CRS doesn't matter because the KML data is not really projected. It's basically still in latitude and longitude. Okay. Just see if there's anything else I want to say about QGIS. Okay, so let's close up QGIS and move on to ArcGIS. Just to show you that ArcGIS is actually a little bit more limited in what it can do initially, only because you can't download the data directly from the GPS. You do have to do one of those intermediate steps using one of the three options we just talked about in order to create a GPX file. So you need to either use the software that comes with a unit, DNR GPS, or QGIS to create a GPX file. Now, the reality is if you use DNR GPS or QGIS, it wouldn't really make much sense to create a GPX file to bring the data into ArcGIS, because what you really want in ArcGIS is a shapefile, projected shapefile. But if there was some reason that you had GPX data, maybe because you don't have any of those other options or haven't downloaded them, don't want to use them, there is a way to bring that GPX file that you could have created into this project. So I'm actually once again going to add imagery service. Okay. Just to get some imagery in the background. And then in order to bring in GPX data, I have to go into Arc Catalog, System Toolboxes, Conversion Tools, and you can see from GPS is in here. And what we want to use is GPX2 feature. So this is a little bit like going into my plugins in QGIS. There's lots of tools and toolboxes here in my Arc Catalog. And so I'm going to open up GPX2 features, and you can see this is very simple. I just need to tell it where's the GPX file, so I can use either of these. Let's try the first one. there's no difference. And I'm going to tell it to put the data. And let's call this 4. And you can see that it's creating a shapefile. This is my 4th way to bring in and transform things. Now, one of the annoying things about this recent version of ArcGIS, and I think this is still 10, I actually can't remember whether I have 10.1 or 10.0, I think I still have 10.0, it doesn't really tell you it's doing anything. It will eventually pop up a little informational thing over here to tell you when it's done, but right now it's not really telling me anything, which when I was trying this recently it was a little frustrating because I was not absolutely sure that it was doing its job. And given that it's not that many points, it does take a long time. There we go. GPX to features, check mark, yay. And there they are. Let's improve this little. Zoom into it. And there we go. Ah, oh, I seem to have brought in the track, not the points. But you can see that I had brought it in. I brought something in, brought in the track. So that's how you go about bringing GPX data into ArcGIS. Okay, I'm not really going to do anything else in here. I just wanted to point out that you can do that function. All right, we're going to move on to some online options. Actually, I'm going to pause for a second and just see. I don't see that anyone has sent in any questions, but if anyone has any burning questions right now, I would be happy to address them, just in case. So throw them my way if you're having them. All right. So I'm going to show you 2 online options. Oh, here's a question. Sorry. Oh. Okay, so it's just letting me know there is a way to see what's going on. When you're creating a process in ARC10, go to the Geoprocessing pull-down box at the top of the screen and go down to Results. It will pull up a dialog box. Right, let's just do, I don't know if I'm going to be able to recognize that. At the top of the screen, Geoprocessing. Oh, Geoprocessing. Okay, well that's something to know. So Jeff is just letting us know that we might be able to check on the status of a process. I might try that in a minute just to see if that actually allows me to look at it while it's in processing it, some information. So what I'm going to do is go into ArcGIS Online, and if you're not familiar with ArcGIS Online, you're going to get a very short, quick introduction. Still logged in? Yes, I'm still logged in. So I just want to point out that in order to do what I'm about to do, which is creating and editing maps. Oops, I still have a map on here. I am logged in, and that allows me to create custom maps and actually save them. And I have a little pile of my content, my maps that I've made, or data that I've uploaded. And what I want to demonstrate is simply Oh, new map. Why did it take me back here? Demonstrate the fact that you can bring data into ArcGIS Online pretty easily and then edit it in ways, or rather enhance it in ways that are kind of cool and share it with people. I'm not going to do a lot of detail, but I do just want to show that if you have GPX data, we can add it to this map. So add layer from file, browse to one of my GPX files. So this is just that same folder. It has all those different versions of the tracks and the points. I picked one of the track GPX files. For some reason it automatically assigns this interesting, also interesting that it seems to have the points as well. So there's my track. You can see that it's automatically got this particular map as a background. It's automatically assigning some symbology, but I can change that. I can turn on editing. I want to point out that you can change the base map. So right now it's got this nice topo map in the background. I could change that to imagery. I could change that to a very plain gray map. I could change it to OpenStreetMap. Got lots of options. I can do kind of more the National Geographic look, which is not going to be so exciting for Waterbury. So the other thing that I wanted to point out, right, I can edit. Let's say I want to edit this little pop-up. Oh, maybe I cannot do this. Well, I can change my symbol in here. Oh, no. No, that's not very helpful. So I'm more limited in my editing than I thought I was going to be. Well, what I wanted to show was that if I add a point, so by saying I want to add map notes, I'm really saying that I want to put points and lines and polygons on this map. So I'm going to put a point right here. And, oh, that's my issue. Just realized. But anyway, I can give this a name. And I can go to where I have some photos. So here I have a photo of one of the benches I saw on my walk. And if I just right-click and copy the image location, what I'm basically copying there is the URL for that image. I can put it in here, close that up. And now when I click on that little box, it actually puts the photo right in there, embeds the photo, which is kind of a neat thing to be able to do on your map. Let's add, I think my problem is I never added the point data, even though it looks like it's there. So our waypoints, we can change the symbols. Let's see if I can edit them. Turn it off. Huh. It seems to smash the waypoints and the log together for some reason. Alright, I'm not going to demonstrate too much more in ArcGIS because obviously I don't use it enough. The final thing I wanted to show everybody is actually Google Maps. So once again, I'm logged in. So in order to edit my maps or my places, I need to be logged into my Google account. And I'm just going to first show you the VCGI map. Or it's not really a map, it's just a point. And all I did was drop a point on our building, put our logo as the icon, and put a link to our photo in here so that it provides the photo as well. And I just want to point out that is actually being streamed right into here. So this is an embedded live map, interactive map, where you can see that we've got that same icon and photo. Okay, let's go back. So now I'm going to create a new map with my new data. And again, up at the top it says Create Map. They've changed the tool that's available to create maps, and I have not learned how to use it yet. So I go back to Classic My Maps, which allows me to create a map, give it a title. And then I can, with Google Maps, you can always just drop points and lines on the map by just clicking on these tools up here. But, oops. But what I actually want to do is import some data. And remember, we're not going to use GPX, we're not going to use shapefile, we're going to look for that KML file. It should be somewhere. Okay. So there's my trail, my active log trail. I can also bring in the points. And now I can better demonstrate the fact that we can, so right now I'm in edit mode, and I can edit this little pop-up box. I don't really want the comment field, which is the date and time, but I would like to insert an image. That's still the right image. And there's my bench. Let's put up just a couple more. Oh, and notice that the title of this point is indeed the name that I had given to the point. There's my sign. So I switch from plain text to rich text, click on the insert image option, copy the name of the, or rather the URL of the picture in there, and say OK. If I click on done, so now I'm no longer in edit mode, and I can see what this looks like. There's my bench, and there's my sign. And of course, if I wanted to, I can put some more. I can type text in here. I'm going to put something up in front of the. I guess I can't get in front of it. Put some text in here. save it, that text appears. And if I wanted to, I could turn that into a link, have it linked to something else, maybe a website about the State Office Complex construction, or about the Cross Vermont Trail. So that's kind of a fun option to be able to bring in photos very easily into these online applications with your GPS data. So obviously I carried my camera around with me while I was taking pictures, while I was collecting the GPS data. Okay, I think I ignored a question a moment ago, so let me just go back to that. Or actually, it may have been a comment. Okay, Sarah Parks asks, in ArcGIS, if you import the tracks, can you just use the points to lines tool to convert it to a polyline? Yes, I assume that you can do that. I have to admit I haven't done that much myself, so I'm not sure I'm going to try to demonstrate that right now. Although it's obvious. Yeah, I don't actually know where that is off the top of my head. So I think I'm not going to dig around, but yes, I think the answer is that you definitely can. I am a little confused about why that came out that way. So I'm curious to try that again. Maybe one of the other track files. That's 4. Let's try 3. And now we can test. Oh, that was so fast. No, it comes in this point. That one is much faster. So yes, I think you have to convert it. This is a good time if anyone has any more questions. I zoomed through that a lot faster than I thought I would. So if you like, I can go back to my PowerPoint, although my PowerPoint doesn't work so well in GoToWebinar today. But I can certainly go back to that and try going over the GPS use, using the actual GPS unit. But if you have questions, go ahead and send them. Maybe I'll review the map PowerPoint back up. Let's see if we can make that work. So again, just to review, what we talked about was downloading data from the GPS in GPX, shapefile, and KML formats, using different tools to do that. There's not the benefits and drawbacks of each one really just depend on what you're interested in doing. The software that comes with your GPS probably, if you have a consumer grade, probably is only going to allow you to create GPX. DNR GPS gives you a lot more options. You can create shapefiles, KML, and GPX. You can project the data into a particular coordinate system. But all it does is allow you to download and transform the data and edit it a little bit. QGIS is an actual GIS software program that allows you to to connect directly to your GPS, download the data as a GPX, and then if you want to, you can output it in, actually I didn't point this out, or no, maybe I did point out, you can output it as either shapefile or KML. And then we talked a little bit about projection coordinate system stuff, and the fact that being aware of whether you're projecting your data or not is important, and noticing whether you have a projection file as a result of your the creation of your data is also really important. Somebody asks about having high school students using iPhones and Android devices to do trail collection. Are there any simple software apps you can recommend or a website for this? Luckily, my quick answer is that in mid-December there will be a webinar Learning to Map in an App World. Discover the power of mapping with your phone. And that is not offered by me because I'm not an expert on mapping with your phone. But Shane Bratt from University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension will be doing that webinar on December 10th from 1:30 to 2:30. So you can learn a lot more about taking advantage of mapping using the GPS in your phone if you check out that webinar. So I don't have any quick answers. I don't have any helpful information to offer related to that, other than the fact that we do have a webinar coming up. Perhaps I will also point out some other webinars that are coming up. We are getting started with Python the week after Thanksgiving. And then later in December, I'm actually going to do a repeat of a webinar I did earlier this month. And because it had a little technical issue at the end and we were not able to record it. So I'm going to do it over again and record it and hopefully get that posted on our YouTube page pretty soon. Oh, good. And Laura also said, yes, you can use the point-to-line tool with the points that you collect, or I assume with the track if the track comes in as points. Just remind me of in terms of pointing things out. YouTube page. I thought I could actually go to the YouTube page just so you can all see it. Sorry. Because there are a bunch of older, from last year, webinars of various types. At our YouTube page. So if you're interested in any of this, it's all posted and available for you. There are also some links here to some of the other channels that we recommend, like the ANR, Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, also has some really good, here we go. And then there's some funny ones down at the bottom. Vermont ANR GIS has very instructive videos posted about using the ANR Atlas and also about using the BioFinder online tool. All right, I think I have used up my time. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to send them now. Otherwise, I think I'm going to say goodbye in a moment. So as I said, this webinar has been recorded, and when I sign off, it'll do its magic and finish its processing, and I should be able to get that posted in the next few days or by Friday at the latest. But probably I might even just do it this afternoon if I can remember to. And it'll get pointed here. It takes a little while to upload, so maybe check for it tomorrow or at the end of the week. So thank you very much. You're going to get a brief survey as you sign out, and I really appreciate you answering the questions. There's just a few, and we take the answers very seriously in planning for the future and also in figuring out how we can best serve everybody's needs in terms of this kind of training. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.